Good afternoon to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Monday, the 28th of September, 2015. A lot to talk about today. We'll start off with the sea surface temperature anomalies. Dominating the Pacific here is the El Nino. Really no changes with that right now. Of course, you can still see the very warm water in the northern Pacific as a whole. And it's interesting, Hawaii has made it all season long without direct substantial impacts from tropical systems. Will they go the rest of the season with that streak intact? We'll have to wait and see. Some interesting goings on, if I can say it, out in that region in the models over the next several days. We'll just wait and see if something develops, and then we can talk about it then. South of Mexico here, we do have Marty sitting over very warm water relative to normal. And then look at the Atlantic Basin, how warm this is compared to, I think, what a lot of people thought it would be this year, especially in this region right through here, what we call the deep tropics. I mean, just in this box alone, there's no blue at all. They're right there in the little corner, but that's it. The Cape Verde Islands all the way over to the Caribbean, running a quarter to a half, maybe a full degree, maybe more than that, above the long-term average. And that extends into the Caribbean, the Gulf, and then, of course, the Northwest Atlantic, quite a bit warmer than it should be this time of year. Now let's take a look at the actual sea surface temperatures and how this will come into play with what's going on over the next few days in the tropics. The Gulf of Mexico, shelf water starting to cool off a little bit quicker, as you would expect this time of year, all the way down to, we'll call it about 26 degrees latitude, and points north, water temperatures in the low 80s, but south of here still in the mid to almost upper 80s in the southern Gulf, and of course in the northwest Caribbean, where upper ocean heat content is very robust still this time of year. Now, the northwest Atlantic sea surface temperature map is going to come into play over the next few days, it looks like, as we do have our depression sitting down here, and I'll talk about that more in detail in a moment. But notice, right along the coastline, water temperatures are below 80 degrees, but just offshore, you still have low to mid 80s. You can call it 26, 27, 28 Celsius, if you want to look at it from the Celsius scale. And then just north of here, the 24 degrees Celsius line extends up pretty far to the north. And so basically, you do have enough energy sitting in here that should a system try to come out of the tropics, it's going to have plenty of warm water to work with. And that segues very nicely into what's happening here with tropical depression number 11, sitting well to the east of Daytona, Florida here, and to the southwest of Bermuda, forecast to become a tropical storm as it turns towards the north and north-northwest with time. Interesting that you have parts of the mid-Atlantic states in the cone of uncertainty, parts of the eastern North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, up to New Jersey. Not a hurricane and not forecast to become a hurricane, at least by most of the reliable model guidance, although some of the models, the UK Met, the United Kingdom Met model, is indicating that this gets pretty strong down here over the next few days. We'll have to see if that's just feeding back, what we call convective feedback issues. Is it lessening the shear too much? You don't want to turn your back on these features for sure, especially when they come into an area where you have these vigorous fronts coming off the continent and they start to interact here over the western Atlantic. You have some interesting things that can go on, and we'll look at that in a moment in the model analysis. Looking at the satellite picture of Tropical Depression 11, there's the low-level swirl, mid-level energy, and the clouds displaced off to the south and the east of the low-level swirl because of northerly and northwesterly shear. If this shear relaxes enough, then this system has a chance to really ramp up and intensify. Water temperature is quite warm in the region. All it needs is an atmosphere that relaxes just a little bit, and the wind not blowing across the top of the system, but letting up just a little bit. And some of the models are showing that. Other ones, not so much, and they keep this fairly weak. And that's what the Hurricane Center shows, is it only getting up to about 45 miles per hour over the next several days. I do want to show you a wide perspective of the Atlantic Basin before we move on to the model analysis. just to give you a perspective on what we have out there today. First, interesting little upper level low with a weak surface reflection here over the northwest Gulf. Nice train of moisture coming into it, sort of like a hybrid system, not even subtropical in nature. It still has a sort of a frontal envelope attached to it still. And then you have 99L sitting in here, stretched out, the energy getting pulled apart, so this won't develop into anything coherent or cohesive, but a lot of moisture is going to come up into the south and southeast United States, moving on up into New England eventually. I'll show you that in a moment on the model analysis. And then here's TD number 11, the leftover moisture envelope of Ida, and then another system out here that'll have to be watched as this energy comes westward over the next several days. So a lot going on, but is anything going to sort of take the cake, so to speak, and be the event to remember for this month, or maybe even the hurricane season? Well, let's take a look at the GFS. Let me show you what's what. I'm going to run the animation on this. Hopefully the flash player won't let me down. This is the initial conditions, and here's TD 11. This is the east coast of the United States here, Cape Cod, Mid-Atlantic, Carolinas, Florida. I think you get the idea. And I want you to watch as this comes up and then kind of what happens in this region right through here. All right? We'll run the loop, and then I can analyze it and show you each time the loop resets itself. In fact, I better just reset it myself because it's trying to go squirrely on me, as these flash players can sometimes do, these animations. I wish they would save it as a GIF animation. Yeah, see, it's just not behaving for me. That's so frustrating. So let me go back here to the actual image source, and we'll just go through it one day at a time. That might work the best. So here we are, 24 hours out. This is valid Tuesday morning. And there's our tropical depression well to the south and east of Hatteras. Nice high pressure sitting out over the western Atlantic. And this comes up around the periphery of it. Kind of, no big deal. We've seen that many times before. Go out to 48 hours into the future. And now we have the moisture coming out of the Gulf interacting with this front. So some pretty heavy rainfall perhaps for the northeast United States. But then look at all of this energy just kind of focused in here. TD 11 down here, this front coming through, some upper level energy dropping southward out of Canada. Going to be a very wet time over the next few days for the Mid-Atlantic and parts of New England. Finally, at day 3 here, you see the depression still kind of lingering down here just to the southeast of Hatteras, as very heavy rain sets up shop over portions of New England, well up into Maine, and even parts of Nova Scotia. But watch what happens with this energy here. This is the depression, and if we're going out into time, this was 72 hours. Here we are at 96 hours, and you see it starts to sort of energize right there, getting a little bit more active as another front comes in, some energy coming out of the Great Lakes, and I'll show you that in a moment from a different perspective, so that by day 5, 120 hours out, the end of the week here, heading into the weekend, lots and lots of moisture fed up into New England, the Mid-Atlantic states. And the only thing I'll say about this, if this doesn't get stretched out and can sort of, as we say, bundle the energy, we might have more than we're seeing here to deal with for the Mid-Atlantic and New England over the next several days. And then you have to wonder, is that Ida coming back? Wouldn't that be something? Then you add this to the mix. And if we just keep going out, let me just show you day 6. So this will be valid Sunday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Just a lot of moisture here, a lot of energy focused in over parts of New England. Potentially very heavy rain for some of these mountainous areas. And we saw what happened in 2011, I think it was, with one of these systems that got up into Vermont and caused a lot of heavy rain. Can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was the remnants of Lee, but it escapes me exactly which one. But in 2011, there was a big flood event in parts of New England, Vermont, New Hampshire. I think it was Vermont, but I don't remember specifics. But that kind of tropical rainfall over those mountainous terrains, it can happen. Now this is interesting if we look at the 500 millibar pattern for this same time frame, and we know my loop isn't going to cooperate with me. So watch this. At 72 hours, you have this trough that digs in here, and there's some energy stretched out along this trough. But instead of digging in and lifting out, it kind of retrogrades a little bit. And I wish I could show you the animation, but alas, I don't have it to show you. It just won't play for me properly for some reason. So the trough digs in, you have this energy coming out of the Great Lakes, ridge fighting off over the Atlantic, and then in between is where this energy kind of gets trapped. And that's where it gets interesting, because if we're going out here to day 5, I think it is, 120 hours out, look what we have. Let's try and get it to load for me. Lots and lots of energy digging south, a negatively tilted trough, the ridge poking its way back in, sort of retrograding westward, and then all this energy trying to come up out of the tropics. I just have to think that something really interesting is going to happen in this area between these two sources of energy. I don't know. It seems weird to me, and the models are having a hard time handling it, sort of stretching that energy out. And if you add to that the euro of all the models finally showing a little bit of amplification of the MJO into phases 8 and 1, the GFS, interestingly enough, also showing that coming up, and then it really amplifies it over into the Western Pacific and Central Pacific, where again there could be some concerns for Hawaii more than a week out from now. But the euro and the GFS sort of adding to the interesting setup here over the next few days, that you folks up here in New England, Cape Cod, down through Long Island and northern New Jersey, this whole region, even up into Maine, you're going to have to watch this as energy comes out of the tropics. Maybe it focuses and you get one heck of a wind and rain event, or it could just be a lot of heavy rain. Stay tuned. It's an interesting week ahead for sure. A lot of stuff in the pot, so to speak. I just don't know what the final product's going to be. It's a lot of carrots and potatoes and whatever else, but will the end result be something memorable, or just, yeah, okay, it was a big rain event and whatever, let's get on to winter. We shall see. So stay tuned. All right, well, there's a pretty lengthy update, a lot to go over. Hopefully it made sense to you. Still a lot of time to watch and see what goes on as the different global models digest what's happening out there. And I don't think we're going to really know for another couple of days, maybe 3 days, as to what the final outcome will be. But one thing for sure, I'll be talking about it on the website and on these daily video blogs for you to enjoy yourself. All right? Thanks as always for tuning in. I'm Mark Suttle of 4HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with you again with another video update tomorrow.